All right, thank you for staying with us. You're watching Daybreak on Trust TV. Now, the burden of leadership is onerous, but it is also an honor and privilege which comes with great benefits and opportunities. Any organization, community, and nation without leaders will be in state of anarchy. This is the reason why the 10th National Assembly has before it the task of screening ministerial nominees presented to it by President Bola Tinubu. Now, leadership, no doubt, involves the heavy burden of responsibility. For this reason, the screening of will-be ministers is not only a sensitive but very crucial task that cannot be taken lightly. On Daybreak today, we'll be talking about this. And we have in the studio the Senator Yusuf Abubakar, who represented Taraba Central from 2015 to 2023. And also we have Dr. Emmanuel Ibe. He is a public affairs analyst and former Director of Investigation, Police Service Commission and Managing Consultant, LPS, Development Consultants Limited. He joins us also for some perspectives. Thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak this morning.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, first, let me start with you, distinguished. Let me start by congratulating the APC on its 10th anniversary today. We look forward to much more, even as the APC leads the country in this dispensation. But then the APC has a lot of tasks before it, and so it's something that we'll be happy to touch on today, specifically talking about the screening of ministerial nominees. So far, we've seen the first batch, 28 names so far submitted by the president, and a lot of people have been talking, as usual, as to, some of the names that they have seen, former governors, as, should I say, expected. A lot of people suspected that there is likely to be some names, and they have been proven right. We have a former governor of Kaduna State, a former governor of Rivers State, David Umahi, and also others. What do you make of the people that we are seeing in that list?
Well, thank you very much, and also let me also join you in congratulating, APC, the All Progressive Congress for clocking, 10 years. And yes, it is not normally easy for us people may think, to constitute a cabinet. It is a very, very difficult thing, especially, in a political space like Nigeria, where you have a lot of conflicting, interest groups, religious, ethnicity, professional, and politicians, and all sort of. So first of all, it is not an easy thing. And then secondly, the president, has responsibility to himself and to Nigeria to pick the people he thinks he can work with. Not the people that can just come and work, but the people that he can work with. Now, thirdly, if he's picking the people he can work with within this conflicting, environment, he has to be very, very cautious. He has to be apt. He has to also, have things to his sleeves to say, well, these people, I know this, I know this, I know this, I know this, and they are the people I think I will work with. And you see, a lot of people will ask, what is the schedule of a minister? What is the schedule of a minister? The schedule of a minister is as determined by the schedule of the ministry. So if you move a minister from one ministry to the other, his schedule changes to the schedule of the other ministry. So I think, on the balance of probability that we have, the president has done well in picking these 28 names so far. And I think, I will clap for him because, he has decided, he has, taken upon himself to balance, the conflicting forces that we have spoken about, awaiting the remaining either 15, or 13.
All right, Dr. Ibe, how important is it at this point to ensure that we put square pegs in square holes as looking at the situation of the country at the moment? You know, before now, a lot of Nigerians were thinking that the names were going to come side by side the portfolio. But when the chief of staff to the president was speaking, he said that they didn't do that because to allow room for reviews. So, ordinarily, if that had come during the screening that begins today, every minister will be asked questions pertaining to the portfolio that must have been attached. But now that didn't happen. So how important is it to ensure that square pegs are put in square holes?
Well, thank you once again for having me. The truth about it is the government in place does not have the luxury of playing around issues, because Nigerians are agitated, Nigerians are expectant, and as it was said, they want to see a government that will hit the ground running, so to speak. And what has happened so far, again, it looks as if Nigerians were somewhat worried that it had to take so long a time, especially looking at the law that states that a president must present his list for about within 60 days. Thereabout, and government had to wait until the eve of the 60th day to present that list. It was expected, as it has been, especially for somebody like the president who has nurtured this ambition for so long, that one would not wait for this long. But having it now, I think he needs to be congratulated, just like distinguished senator mentioned. I know the dynamics in choosing one that will be a minister is not an easy one, because there are various variables that you really have to play around with.
And talking about those variables, Senator, Nigerians are concerned that at a critical moment like this that we have, Nigeria dealing with the economic challenges that we have, where should we put our priority? Politicians or technocrats? That's an argument that have been had over and over again. So do you see technocrats in this list?
Well, personally, like I said, balancing the equation. Certainly, only technocrats cannot give us what we want in this country. Only politicians cannot give us what we want in this country. So we need a blend of the two. We need a blend of technocrats and we need a blend of the politicians, because, I mean, whatever the president is doing today, he's also looking onto the future. He's seen that how do I balance the political equation? How do I also bring people that will help the politicians to solve the economic problem of this country? So we need that blend. So it is not just that one side must outweigh the other side.
There's a thin line there, Senator, because if you say balancing, I mean, how do we do the balancing? Again, so I will rephrase my question. Where should we place our priorities? So the interest of politics is on the one hand. It's not necessarily the interest of the people. In this instance, what we should put above all else is the interest of the people, and how can Nigeria work for everybody. So if the president is thinking about his political interest or trying to be politically correct, to whose detriment?
Well, like I said, you know, when I say the blend, by the time you say you want to emphasize technocrats, technocrats will come in to manage the economy, no doubt about it, but they will need the political infusion into what they do. When you are presenting your memo, you know, at the cabinet, you know, there is much more than the technicalities that you are going to talk about. You are also going to look at, you are now Minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. You are also doing policy for the Federation. You are doing so much of these things. So it is not just like I said, you know, like you want to say that it is a person, but I mean the president is looking at it from I mean from his own also interest. I agree. There must be his interest. There must be national interest. There must be interest of Muslims, interest of Christians, interest of North, interest of South, interest of managing the economy. You know, today we are saying that we have a very big, you know, economic crisis. We always had it. We always had economic crisis.
Perhaps not as bad as
if
this, Senator.
It appears as
Can
if...
you remember SAP?
Senator,
you remember SAP
Senator,
of
it appears
1981? Can
as
you
if...
remember?
I mean, Senator.
I don't know whether you are young at that time, but can you remember SAP?
We had SAP, but this is 2023, and so we are talking about moving forward. How can we make? How can Nigeria, you know, come out of this better, not, you know, in pieces and all? So now, perhaps you should
to manage economic policies. You need the acumen of also the politicians to help in managing the economy. Attitude. I have always said the issue of attitude is important. You can have the best economic policies. If you have poor attitude to handling the issues, you are not going to succeed. So what is fundamental, you know, at this point in time, I agree, 2023 is different from 1985, I agree. But what we are saying that they are all economic crises, and we need much more than technocrat to manage the economy of this country.
All right, but Senator keeps talking about interest. I hope we get to a point where we actually rise above all of this interest and just think about the interest of Nigeria as one block. But Dr. Ibe, today the screening of the senators, of the ministers would begin. We have had instances where, because you're a former senator or even a former lawmaker, you just come in and they tell you to bow and go. As a matter of fact, we have seen statements from lots of Nigerians saying that, well, once they are nominated, they can as well just go about, start planning to resume, because nothing will change at the National Assembly. So what do you think the legislators should do today to ensure that we get the right people for the job?
Well, for me, I think we have reached a point in this country where we should be very specific in the way we deal with issues. I expected that because the leader must have made up his mind who he wants to give what, for the list to have come with the various portfolios, so that people will not be wallowing in the dark. Somebody like Fagbemi, who is a well-known lawyer, I know at the point of screening him, emphasis will be placed on perhaps rule of law and due process and justice and all that, because they know. But what if, again, he's asked questions along that line and the leadership says, no, I'm giving you something else. So the point is that it is very important that those that are nominated are screened along the lines of the duties they are going to perform, so that you know. The idea of taking a bow looks like a joke, so to speak, because I remember when Hillary Clinton was nominated for the office of Secretary of State. Though she was a senator at the time, they grilled her for days. For days. But you know the Nigerian situation, they will laugh at it and all that, say take a bow and go. And I saw one video clip where one of the nominees was speaking in tongue and stuff like that. I said, well, that's Nigeria for you. The Senate should be very, very serious in screening these persons. And where they are not satisfied, one or two or so who do not meet up with whatever questions or criteria, nobody, I mean, they should have the courage to drop such person. Because we no longer have the luxury of business as usual. You know, where people get into government and one confessed the last time that, or he got into a ministry and did not know anything about the ministry. It was the staff that had to take him. And for you to get into a ministry and not knowing what you're supposed to do there, it will take you perhaps 6 months, 1 year. And time flies. And again, in the previous regime, once you were given a ministry, it's as if you have a free ride. Nobody looks at whether you are performing or not. And you stayed there for the whole period. But for a minister who is conscious and having a leader who perhaps can call you up and say, look, you're not doing well, you need to know, you need to have a grip on the policies. It was mentioned here that what does a minister do? A minister drives policies. And those policies perhaps derive from the manifesto of the party. And if a minister is going to take up a responsibility, perhaps health or what, he should know what does the manifesto of the party say when it comes to health provision. And so he will school himself along that line. Not a situation where after screening, you now come and line up and will be waiting for what result will be announced. I don't think that's the right thing to do. I know because of this situation in Nigeria where interests are juggled and all that, that is why perhaps the list did not come with the portfolio, so that last minute they can juggle. But you see, this is Nigeria. We cannot continue to play with the fate of over 200 million Nigerians.
Okay, Senator, to what extent do you think that this lack of attaching a portfolio to the nominees will affect how rigorous the screening is going to be?
Well, I think it will affect it. I have passed, through some screening, in the past, and you see, if you want to do a general screening, there is the limit to which you can assess, the individual, competence and capabilities in running, the affairs of state, as a minister. But if you attach a particular portfolio, then you can be able to say, yes, does he fit or he doesn't fit into this? And I think, in Nigeria, because we want to see how we can, manage, our affairs in a fluid way. That is why sometimes we find it very difficult to have specifics and fix. But I think it is important, among the people that are there, we can assume, based on their CVs, just like what he said about the son, Fagbemi, one can also, talk about other few, that we know their competencies, in those areas. It is our hope and aspirations that the gaze of the Senate will be along that line. If it is the CVs that we have seen, because they distribute the CVs. So, and from the CVs, they can be able to say, well, this is the professional aspect of this individual, and this is the political aspect of this individual. So we should be able to tie our questions or tie our assessment. I wish, they could have tied the portfolios. I think it was discussed, in the 9th Assembly, in the amending of the Constitution. Honestly, I don't know how come, it escaped, but I think the idea is looking at the flip side. If you put a portfolio to a person, and are you going to fix him throughout, to that? If for any reason, has a reason that he has to, the president, has to reshuffle his cabinet and what have you. So where are you going to move him? Are you going back to the National Assembly? Because the confirmation will be, tied to his portfolio. But now, if you now want to change him to another portfolio, are you going to go back to the National Assembly to say, well, I am changing the portfolio, so I think I need another confirmation. So there are issues that, we have to look at in the best way that we can manage the situation, in this country. So, but it would have been better if there are portfolios. But for these reasons, it may be a little bit, difficult for you to have portfolio tied. But the guess of the senators, with the CVs available to them, they should be able to say, well, we are guessing maybe this guy will go to foreign affairs, this guy will go to finance, this guy will go to national planning, this lady will go to what do you call it, maybe women affairs, maybe trade and investment, and what have you. So, and again, remember, these ministries are not fixed. By tomorrow, the president will say, well, I am splitting the ministry. Probably power will be on its own, housing on its own, and maybe works on his own. So, there are a lot of things, that
yes,
can be juggled along.
Yes, distinguished. We're going to come to the splitting and all of that. But, Doctor, at this point, the senators are going to screen based on the credentials that are available to them. But how important is it that when they get back to the president, he ensures that they don't move too far away from their qualifications, they don't move too far away from their discipline, so that we ensure that, like you noted earlier, we had somebody who said after 8 years in the ministry said that he got into the office, before then he didn't know anything. How important is it for the president to ensure that even if there's going to be a review, they don't move too far away from their area of specialization?
You cannot tie the hands of the president. You cannot tie the hands of the president. And this issue of guesswork in Nigeria, talking about body language and all that, I think we should go past that. We should look at a situation where Nigerians can say specifically that this is where the president is going. So when Senate guesses and say perhaps because of his CV, no, it doesn't work that way. A situation in this country where somebody like Bola Ige, may so rest in peace, when he was appointed, initially by the former President Obasanjo's government, somewhere along the line, I think he was Minister for Power. Now, looking at his CV, what has his CV got to do with power? And before he got in there, he thought it was a child's play. He said in 6 months, he will fix power. It took him how many years before he was moved to the office of Attorney General? And we've had so many situations. So that's why it's very, very important that we begin to take this very serious. And I think the civil society and Nigerians will try to hold the president to say that, look, people should be put in areas where they have established competencies. And that is what was. So if Senate does a guesswork and at the end of the day they approve, you cannot hold the president to it. The president is at liberty to place anybody anywhere.
Okay, Doctor.
Yes.
At what point do we get certain clearance that are expected, for ministerial nominees such as this? Clearance, for criminal records, or maybe authentication of their certificates or documents, or whatever, qualification they may have. At what point do we get all those clearances, and whether the Senate or National Assembly should look into that as well? Before now, of course, you should know that when you're nominated, you just don't jump into the Senate for clearance. Your CV perhaps must have been sent in advance, and it will go through security clearance. The security clearance is a backdoor business. It's not announced in public. The police does clearance. The Department of State Security does clearance. They look at all that. But again, you find a situation whereby it is what the president really wants. It happens that way. Because when you talk of security clearance, we've had a situation where somebody who had a forged NYSC certificate
was cleared and became minister.
Exactly the reason why I'm asking that,
Yes.
because
So
we do not want a repeat of something like
and
that.
again, there's also this game that, if the president doesn't want a minister, he can also close his eyes and say the police or the DSS should do as it pleases them. So the issue of clearance is done by the DSS and the police. Backdoor is done well in advance before the names are forwarded to the Senate for their clearance. There's a word for it, not necessarily clearance, confirmation. So you don't do it. It's upfront. It's done upfront.
So how thorough is this, Senator? How thorough is this clearance done? We've had, for instance, a former EFCC chair who was never confirmed by the Senate, and the president waived it and said, well, this is the man I want to work with. And eventually it turns out that this same person in question was suspended at some point by the president himself, who wasn't satisfied by certain reports or some conduct by this person, talking about the former EFCC chair, Magu. So how thorough do we really go in terms of getting these clearances? I know that the National Assembly raised alarm at the time based on a DSS report submitted to it, and that was why they didn't confirm him, but the president still went ahead. So do you see the president listening to the National Assembly if they raise an alarm about a particular nominee?
Well, thank you very much. Certainly screening has to be thorough, and my own take on this, is to say that it is at this point in time, after they have submitted all their documents, all their credentials, to the Senate, I think the Senate should also, have a critical view in terms of, not just competencies, but in terms of character, in terms of, the level of the individual's involvement in one activity or the other, by getting more information from DSS, more information from EFCC, more information from ICPC, more information from the professionals, aspect of it, professional bodies out of it. So my own take on this is to say that it is at this point in time, after the documents have been submitted to the Senate. I don't know what the president might have submitted, to the National Assembly, but I'm aware that, throughout Saturday and Sunday, they had gone into Senate building, to present their documents, to present all these kind of things. But I think it is at this point in time that the Senate has complete documentation of these individuals, that they should be able, to consult, with all the security, aspect of it.
Senator, in the past, while you were there, each time the DSS concluded their investigation and all of that, did they send the reports to the National Assembly as well, considering that you were going to do the screening?
Well, I know of that particular incidence of that of the former acting chairman
of the EFCC.
EFCC.
Well, how about that of ministers?
That of the ministers, I mean, senators are not, privy to whether those things have been done. It's just the leadership of the Senate, the presiding officer, that may have done so or not have done so. But critical as you want to this, once the CV is presented, it is a document that is before the senator, that the senator can talk about. You cannot even impute something that you know about the individual, outside what has been presented before you. So your own assessment of the individual, or your own questions, your own, whatever, has to be within the documents that are before you and within the documents that are before the Senate.
What if the documents that are before the Senate does not capture something of concern, something very critical for members of Parliament to be aware of? about this person, and something that is well documented by authorities and perhaps swept under the carpet?
Unless if it is a petition, if there's a petition, from certain bodies that are saying that, yes, you need to know more about this individual because there's a petition or this individual was this or that, but there's no petition, what are you going to work on? I said that you are not going to bring something just before if you know that Yusuf, is a crew, and what is before you is not showing that he's been.
So the National Assembly do not have any kind of duty whatsoever to do its own investigation?
No. What I'm saying that it has, but the investigation is just to consult if there's any doubt about the CV of a particular individual, because even in CVs you are going to look at what are the dates like. You see, you can assess even the CV of an individual and bring out something out of the CV. If you want, you can. As a senator, you can assess it critically, looking at the dates, looking at the trend, looking at the history of the person over a period of time. Where did we, how did he work? How did he leave that place? What did conduct say about this man? Because all these documents will be attached.
So in that case, Doctor, should we be having these screening exercises over a span of maybe a day or two? Or, how long should it take for us to do a thorough job, really?
Well, the truth about it is I listened to a former senator, a former minister, one of the national televisions, I think that was yesterday or thereabout. And when the question was put to him that does he see the Senate standing down any candidate, he said no. These things have been discussed. You see, what you find in the Senate is a situation where you just have a fait accompli. Most times these things are discussed back doors and then presented because the Constitution says the Senate.
Doctor, you make it sound like it's an academic exercise,
Exactly, but that is what it is. I will take you back to a particular situation where a candidate was presented twice or thereabout, and the Senate turned down the person. And of course, the president said, look, Senate turned you down, so there's nothing I can do about it. But you remember the EFCC case?
Yes.
The president looked, and
I also remember a particular ministerial nominee who was turned down, and he was represented by the same president, and he was confirmed.
Yes.
I do remember.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we have to round up our discussion at this point. Thank you so much, Senator Yusuf, Abubakar Yusuf, former Senator representing Taraba Central, and also Dr. Emmanuel Ibe, Public Affairs Analyst. Thank you for joining us on Daybreak this morning and talking to us about this. We look forward to having you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. Now we'll take a short break, and then when we return, we'll take a look at